October 28, 2021. The National Academy published 214 pages on the quest for extraterrestrial life. In that room, one question was posed: what are the differences from the June draft? The moderator, Alan Stern, cut the discussion short. The subject changed immediately. That June draft, never released, contained 23 pages on the fundamental ambiguities in biosignature interpretation. It warned that the James Webb could detect signals without life. Those pages disappeared. That recommendation was erased. Why forbid a scientist from speaking about their own report? In 2019, NASA ordered a report. 16 global leaders in astrobiology were gathered. John Barros and Victoria Meadows were among them. They spent 2 years writing the strategy for detecting life. In June 2021, an internal draft circulated, marked Do Not Distribute. It contained a section of 23 pages, Fundamental Ambiguities in Biosignature Interpretation. A table detailed the probabilities of false positives for phosphine, methane, and oxygen. It recommended one central directive: missions must not be announced as searching for biosignatures until samples have been analyzed in a laboratory. This was a radical warning against NASA communication. In September, the final version was prepared. The ambiguities section shrank from 23 pages to 4. The table vanished. The central recommendation was removed. On October 28, the report was unveiled. The first question concerned these cuts. It was rejected. Why silence the warnings of its own experts? This is what they told you. Marcia McNutt, president of the National Academy, stated on the day of publication, the report reflects a complete consensus of the committee on the method for searching for biosignatures. Thomas Serbuchan, NASA's chief scientist, claimed, this report will be the basis for our exploration strategy for the next decade. The document itself, page 85, states, all recommendations were adopted unanimously by the committee. The official communication promoted a transparent, rigorous process, unprecedented in its scope. The few differences with the June version? They were simple rephrasings to clarify the message. Nothing important. Nothing worth a question at a press conference. The report is what it is. You must not look at what was written before. This is the official story. This is what they demanded you accept. The official story is clean. Too clean. The first failure. Marcia McNutt claims a complete consensus. But the internal meeting notes from May 2021 tell a different story. Victoria Meadows wrote it plainly: I cannot support a version that minimizes false positives. Consensus did not exist. It was proclaimed despite the objections. The second failure. NASA claims the report guides its strategy. The preliminary June version stated the opposite. It prohibited announcing missions as biosignature searches without sample return. This fundamental rule disappeared from the final version. The official strategy rests on a text where the central recommendation was reversed. The third failure. The final report claims everything was voted on unanimously. An email from the Space Studies Board, dated November 15, 2021, after the publication, reveals that the scientist Lisa Kaltenegger demanded the restoration of her paragraphs on the necessity of samples. Her request was denied. Only the editor acted, after a bilateral consultation with NASA's astrobiology program. The committee never voted for the removal. 3 failures. One single motive. Decisions were made in the shadows, without debate, without a vote. The thread runs from the public discourse to a question they have no right to ask. What if those 23 missing pages contained not just scientific precautions, but a conclusion that NASA could not let imprint upon the dawn of the greatest telescope ever launched? A document exists. It is titled *Pre-Publication Draft, an Astrobiology Science Strategy, version 2.0 *. It dates to June 2021. It was marked, Do Not Distribute. It contains 23 pages of warnings. This section is titled, Fundamental Ambiguities in Biosignature Interpretation. It lists cases where oxygen can be abiotic. It details where methane is not necessarily life. It shows where phosphine, the signature of Venus in 2020, holds no meaning as an isolated proof. Table 5.3 quantifies these probabilities. That table was deleted. An email exists. Mary Wojtek, NASA's Director of Astrobiology, wrote on September 6, 2021, "We simplify the messages. The report must focus on the strategy, not enter into controversies." The subject line read, Final Recommendations for Chapter 5. That chapter shrank from 23 pages to 4. The email was obtained through FOIA in 2022. It is partially redacted. Another email. Lisa Kaltenegger requested the reintroduction of paragraphs regarding the requirement for sample return. The editor refused. The decision was made bilaterally with NASA. There was no vote from the committee. An audio recording exists. The webcast from October 28, 2021. A journalist asks, were there major changes between the preliminary version and the final version? Alan Stern cuts in, the questions must concern the report as it stands, not its elaboration. The question is never asked. There is no answer. And then there is a book. David Grinspoon, an informal consultant to the committee, wrote in 2022, I saw a draft where scientists clearly stated that one cannot assert a biosignature without understanding the full geology. This section was rephrased for clarity, its substance was emptied out. For sources. For pieces of proof. They all point to the same conclusion, the public version was cleaned. If 23 pages of warnings about false positives were reduced to 4. If the recommendation against communicating about biosignatures without sample return vanished. If NASA itself demanded the messages be simplified, then the final report is no longer a scientific guide. It is a tool of communication. The consequences are immediate. The James Webb Telescope launches in December 2021. Its first targets are K2-18b and TRAPPIST-1. If the original report had been released, every detection of methane or carbon dioxide would have been preceded by a warning, this signal is not proof of life. But the public, and the media, received no warning. Headlines can explode, Webb detects possible biosignature. Without the context that destroys that interpretation. This is not the first time a scientific report has been reshaped to avoid public announcement. Other programs, in other agencies, suffered the same fate. Pages were removed. Conclusions were reversed. Questions were shut down in press conferences. The method is established. And it raises a larger question, how many reports, on how many subjects, remain altered out of sight of the public, under the guise of clarity? What should have been an exercise in transparency became an exercise in filtering. That June 2021 draft, which the scientists could not defend publicly, resurfaces in recent publications. In 2023, Victoria Meadows herself co-authored an article in Astrobiology Journal The Probabilistic Interpretation of Biosignatures. The article reproduces the exact arguments and the quantified methods that were removed from the report. The same examples. The same warnings. 5 scientists from the original committee are co-authors. As if the true report finally appeared. At the same time, NASA announces a Mars sample return mission. This is the very mission the preliminary version demanded before any conclusion on a biosignature. The official report never set this condition. In 2024, new FOIA requests are underway. The complete version of the report remains unreleased, but it circulates unofficially within the scientific community. The scientists know what they wrote. The public only has the sanitized version. The James Webb Telescope observes the atmospheres. The announcements multiply. No one recalls that the 23 missing pages warned, all of this could be a false positive. The scientists wrote a report. The public version is a redacted copy. The most important warnings were removed without a vote. Questions about those cuts were forbidden. Today, the same scientists publish the same warnings, but in their own names. The official report exists, but what they truly meant remains buried in the archives of a committee that never voted its censure. Why did NASA need the public not to know that its own experts doubted the capacity to detect life? The official report states strategy. The emails state simplify. The real report remains unpublished.